Hi there, September 1st, 2020. I'm DRutter, and today is the 168th day of my lockdown diary here as we go through approximately 2 to 3 weeks of lockdown in order to flatten the curve and not destroy the medical system. At least that's what we were being told and telling each other back in March when this all began, 168 days ago. And yes, we still are in lockdown. We can leave the house in certain circumstances and in certain ways, but the state of emergency still continues here in British Columbia, Canada, and in all the other provinces in Canada, because they didn't want to declare martial law. That's apparently alarming sounding, so instead they declared a state of emergency in each of the provinces, which gives them the same privileges and rights over the people as martial law. So they do have martial law in Canada, they just didn't call it that, and that continues. So it is still a state of emergency. As I said in my previous video on this topic, it is a state of permanent emergency, or permergency. I said we might as well just make a word for it, because it is a permanent state of emergency now here, at least in British Columbia and the rest of Canada, and probably everywhere else too. 168 days of this emergency. And I didn't really want to go long on this video, so I'm going to try and keep it to maybe 5 minutes. If it's more than that, please, right now, leave a comment and tell me, keep your videos shorter. That's not cool. You said you'd be under 5 minutes. So I just want to talk about basically the stories that are happening and not go too much into them. They're talking now about mandatory vaccines here in Canada and mandatory masks everywhere. Walmart, Starbucks, all the big asshole corporations have already gone and made masks mandatory. I didn't usually go to most of those places, and now I continue to not go to those places. In fact, I will not ever go to any of those places that mandate mandatory masks. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it's healthy for people. I think it's part of social engineering. I think there's something up with the mask thing, okay? Same with the mandatory vaccines. People have been paranoid for generations about the government injecting stuff into them. As a psychiatric nurse for 10 years, I worked with people who had mental illnesses, and many of them believed that the government was going to inject them with something. Or maybe that there were invisible waves in the air that were somehow interacting with the human body and maybe the human mind. All these things were delusions and now have actually come true. So I was locking people up. I was taking part in a system that was locking people up for having beliefs and thoughts of stuff happening. That is happening now. And that was only 10, 15 years ago that I was a psychiatric nurse. So, it is happening very quickly. I imagine that anything in the psych unit right now, today, any delusions that are going on there right now, will soon be true. Those people are probably just ahead of the curve, and they're locked up for it. Now, in some cases, people are really mentally ill, and they think they're Jesus and all that kind of stuff. But in some cases, they're actually onto something, and we were locking people up for believing that the government was going to, say, use 5G, which was announced today. Big rollout in British Columbia, yay! Vancouver, and all the little cities even too. It's all going 5G. And it will be, if not already, up and running any day now. And I kind of wonder, since it is coming to my city too, it was announced, little town that I'm in, I moved out of Vancouver to get away from this crap. And here we are now announcing 5G. I asked them when I moved here, I said, will there be 5G in this town? They said, absolutely not, never. And anyone who thinks so is a conspiracy nut job, they basically said. I didn't say anything in my email. I asked a question, and they called basically me and anyone else who asks questions about 5G conspiracy nut jobs. But it happened. They lied. It was planned. It has been rolled out. And who's paying for that? The government? Taxpayers? Corporations? Some combination of those? And who's going to pay for it if it harms people? My stance on it is that there are a lot of doctors out there that say it's untested, and that 5G radiation causes possible damage to human tissues and possible interference with life. Now, all that has been denied, and the fact that it was even going to happen was denied until it actually did. So now here we are. I'm living in the very center of a small town, which now is going to be putting up towers all around my house, if that's not already what's going on. I reported long ago at the beginning of this lockdown that I was living in a permanent construction zone, and I'm still living in a permanent construction zone. We don't get proper sleep, we don't get proper rest, there's noise almost all the time, there's vibrations almost all the time, and I think what they're probably putting in is not a roundabout. They say they've been putting in a roundabout, which is a little round intersection. For the past 9 months, they've been working on it. And I think that's something else. I think that they're probably putting in some wiring and some towers is what's going to be here when it finally completes. Just one more thing about the pandemic. The USA has been saying all along that people like Sweden, countries like Sweden, are doing everything wrong with the pandemic. They say that they're going to kill their people. It's terrible strategy, and you should lock your country down like the US and Canada did. Now the US, the numbers in the US, official numbers, have now crept up to the point where they are worse than Sweden per capita, per million people, or per however many people you want to count. It's worse in the United States than it is in Sweden, even though Sweden didn't have a lockdown. So no lockdown means less deaths than lockdown. Now that has been proven in the numbers, and I'll link below. Sweden now is higher than the United States in deaths per capita from COVID-19. So that tells us that lockdown not only doesn't work, it's actually killing people. We now have the numbers to show. In the United States, supposedly the best healthcare system in the world, they are killing people faster than in Sweden, where there was absolutely no lockdown, no societal changes, almost no contact tracking or masks or anything like that. It's way better in Sweden than in the United States now. And it's only getting better for Sweden. They're not losing any more people, and the United States is losing thousands per day. That's still nothing compared to most illnesses, of course, but, you know, respectively, the United States is doing far poorer than Sweden without a lockdown. I'm going to leave it there. That's just basically what's going on right now. I went over the limit. Don't be too upset with me. I'm going to throw 3 darts. I hit the board with all 3. And one more thing. Trudeau here in Canada just announced that he has purchased, I guess with our money, 2 doses of the future vaccine from an international big pharma company as soon as it's ready. But of course, there will not be any trials. They're rushing it through. It's going to be done in December, in 8 months, instead of the usual 10 to 15 years. And that's because they're skipping the 10-year testing process. So this vaccine is going into people untested. I think that's a little bit of an issue. What's going on in your area? Are people wearing masks? Are they mandating masks? Are they going to be doing forced vaccinations? What's happening where you are? Thanks for watching, and stay well.